The doctrine of Parmenides was set forth in a poem on nature. He considered the senses deceptive, and condemned the multitude of sensible things as mere illusion. The only true being is the One, which is infinite and indivisible. It is not, as in Heraclitus, a union of opposites, since there are no opposites. He apparently thought, for instance, that cold means only not hot, and dark means only not light. The One is not conceived by Parmenides as we conceive God. He seems to think of it as material and extended, for he speaks of it as a sphere. But it cannot be divided, because the whole of it is present everywhere.
One of the most intriguing aspects of there being one dimension stacked on another is that down here in the dimensions below we can be unaware of our motion in the dimensions above. Here's a simple example. If we make a Mobius strip, take a long strip of paper, add one twist to it and tape the ends together, and draw a line down the length of it, our line will eventually be on both sides of the paper before it meets back with itself. It appears, somewhat amazingly, that the strip has only one side, so it must be a representation of a two-dimensional object. And this means that a two-dimensional flatlander, traveling down the line we just drew, would end up back where they started without ever feeling like they had left the second dimension. In reality, they would be looping and twisting in the third dimension, even though to them it felt like they were traveling in a straight line. The fourth dimension, time, feels like a straight line to us, moving from the past to the future. But that straight line in the fourth dimension is, like the Mobius strip, actually twisting and turning in the dimension above. So the long undulating snake that is us will feel like it is moving in a straight line in the fourth dimension, but there will actually be, in the fifth dimension, a multitude of paths that we could branch to at any given moment. Those branches will be influenced by our own choice, chance, and the actions of others. Quantum physics tells us that the subatomic particles that make up our world are collapsed from waves of probability simply by the act of observation. In the picture we are drawing for ourselves here, we can now start to see how each of us are collapsing the indeterminate wave of probable futures contained in the fifth dimension into the fourth dimensional line that we are experiencing as time.
This void has a total lack of dimension. Therefore, by any accepted standard, it does not exist, yet being within it denies that conclusion.
Targung, the great emptiness.
The whole idea of nothing is something that has bugged people for centuries, especially in the West. Because we have a saying in Latin, ex nihilo nihil fit, which means that out of nothing comes nothing. You can't, in other words, get something out of nothing. And it's occurred to me that this is a fallacy of tremendous proportions that lies at the root of all our common sense, not only in the West, but in many parts of the East as well. And it comes up as a kind of terror of nothing, a put down on nothing, on everything to do with nothing, everything associated with nothing, such as sleep, passivity, rest. What has struck me is that nothing, the negative, the empty, is exceedingly powerful.
Nothing is more fertile than emptiness.
I would say, not ex nihilo nihil fit, out of nothing comes nothing, but I would say you can't have something without nothing. But how do we basically begin to think about the difference between something and nothing? I can say, there is a cigar in my right hand and there is no cigar in my left hand. And so we get the idea of is here and isn't or empty here. But behind that, of course, lies the far more obvious contrast of solid and space. Now, we tend to think of space as nothing. When we talk about the conquest of space, there's a little element, notice, of hostility in that phrase. But actually, we're talking about the conquest of distance. Space as such, that is to say, whatever it is that lies between the Earth and the Moon and the Earth and the Sun, is considered to be just nothing at all. But to suggest how very powerful and important this nothing at all is, let me point out to you that if you didn't have space, you couldn't have anything solid. To begin with, without space outside the solid, you wouldn't know where the solid's edges were. For example, you can see me on the camera because you see a background here and all around me, and that background shows up my outline.
It's, for example, difficult to see a hand unless there is a contrasting background. Were there no background to the hand itself would vanish.
Nothing is more fertile than emptiness.
But you always have to have a background to see a figure. You just can't do without it. To have the whole idea of there being only space and nothing else at all is not only inconceivable but perfectly meaningless, because we always know what we mean by contrasts. We know what we mean by white in comparison with black. They must come into being together.
Because of the inseparability of these opposites, they always go together. This, as it were, hints at some kind of unity which underlies them.
You don't have first something and then nothing, or first nothing and then something.
This unity is called Tao.
Space and form, in that sense, go together as the fundamental things we're dealing with in this universe. That which is void is precisely form, and that which is form is precisely void.
Ah! Again? You can smell wood smoke. A forest. Where are you? A train. Waiting. From the windows, 3 trees whose mystery spoke to you. A workman outside striking the wheel. A spoon on a saucer speaks. It's the connection. How different this way of experiencing the past. Direct, yes. You try to remember the past yourself. You try to force a memory. Your life, your Baalbek, Venice, Combray. You make yourself remember, and it's nothing. Just a review of ideas you've had 1,000 times, which we call memory. It's dead. Nothing is relived. But I'm talking about something very different. It renews us, because we've been there before, and the only true paradises are the paradises we've lost. This is the essence of things, when the past and the present are brought together in an instant, by an association of smell or sound, or now we're living in the present and the past. Now, the same moment, at the same moment, and in this moment, all time is defeated, and we are freed, and bliss pours in. And without time, death holds no fear for us.
The uncertainty, self-discovery, the unknown. These are many of the qualities that make life worth living. Well, at least to me. I wouldn't want to live my life knowing that my future was written. My boundaries had been already set. Would you?
Creation is God's boss. And creation does not react. Creation simply allows people to gather enough rope to hang themselves, because creation is never surprised, as Creator is often surprised by the unintended consequences of its actions. Creation knows all consequences. Creator does not, and that's why by creating dark energy to replace matter, creation has caused the speeding up of the expansion of the universe, which has put us in the mess we're in. Unintended consequences.